Hello, and welcome to the third of these Marianist Social Justice Collaborative sessions on immigration issues in the context of Catholic social justice teaching and the coming election. In our first session, we heard from Bishop Seitz about the Church's concern and position regarding immigrants and shared a video with varied information and opinions about the current immigration situation in the U.S. In our second session, Andre Lopez spoke about Catholic social justice teaching in relationship to immigration, and particularly in terms of the situation at the southern border. You can find links for these two previous sessions below the link for this video. But besides the South, the United States has thousands of miles of borders in the north and along our coasts. And migrants, that is, people who have left their homes for any variety of reasons, arrive here by sea and air as well as by land, and usually with a great deal of fear and uncertainty. So to better understand the complexities of the issues, in this session, I will be talking about the different types of immigrants. That is, a migrant who enters the U.S. for an extended or permanent stay. Immigrants are classified in distinctly different categories, each of which is treated differently, and who will be affected differently by the policies that result from the coming election. Therefore, it makes sense as we consider our voting or election activities, sort out mis- or disinformation, and be familiar with the differences. My name is Rich Sroczynski, and I am a member of the MSJC Immigrant Justice Team. I am also a refugee who has become a naturalized U.S. citizen. My parents, along with my brother, sister, and myself, came to the U.S. in 1953 after years of waiting and traveling through many other countries as World War II refugees. Refugees are one category of immigrant. They are persons fleeing threat of serious harm or persecution who meet and are referred according to established standards through offices of the United Nations. Refugee status is determined before a person comes into the countries where they wish to settle, and a person must apply and also meet the standards that apply at the time of the country that they wish to enter. In the U.S., there is an annual ceiling set by the President with the approval of Congress on the number of refugees admitted into the country. In recent years, the number of refugees permitted into the U.S. has dropped tremendously, but President Biden has increased it to 125,000 for each of the last 3 years. This is still significantly less than the 200,000 admitted in 1980 when the current program began, and just a tiny fraction of the 117 million forcibly displaced persons and potential refugees estimated by the United Nations in the world today. So clearly, most potential refugees wait years or even lifetimes for their application to be reviewed, much less accepted. Refugees applying for entry into the United States are reviewed by the State Department, and if accepted, they are assigned to an approved sponsoring agency, preferably in an area where they have family or a community. They receive limited support, including a work permit, and the sponsoring agency is responsible for housing and other essential services for a limited period of time. Individuals and groups may also serve as sponsors for refugees, and if this piques your interest, for more information, see the link below for the Welcome Program, again, where you found this link. Refugees accepted into the U.S. may apply for permanent residence or a green card after a year of residency, and they do have a path for eventual citizenship. At least since World War II, it has been agreed internationally that all persons have a right to seek protection from persecution and other life-threatening situations. and that all countries are obliged to have a fair process for persons to seek and to have the potential to receive such protection. Accepting refugees from outside the country is one type of migrant protection. But the category receiving most attention these days is persons seeking asylum. When a person has a credible fear of persecution on the basis of one of 5 established grounds, that is race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular class such as sexual orientation, politics, or caste, they are eligible to request asylum. However, in order to do so, they must be present in the country they seek to enter. This is a critical point. Asylum seekers have no other option but to enter the country where they seek protection. They are required to present themselves at an approved border point of entry. However, under present U.S. law, there is a limit placed on the total number of persons entering in any given day at the southern border. Points of entry include specific points on the northern and southern borders, as well as certain air and sea facilities. Persons seeking asylum must present themselves to a border official and formally request asylum. In recent years, this policy has been modified so that persons seeking asylum must first have made an appointment online before entering the country. However, the truth is that very few calls ever get through, and for those that do, the wait for their appointment is many months away. And this delay exists even though currently the actual number of persons coming in has in fact declined. Otherwise, it is effectively at the border agent's discretion whether to allow the person to enter. Although currently in almost all cases at the southern border, persons seeking asylum have only minutes to make their case, and usually in a foreign language which the border agent may not be equipped to handle. And if at all, the vast majority are turned back where they wait in Mexico for interminable periods of time without further resources and vulnerable to abuse, which is common. Or their request may be officially denied and they have no choice but to seek asylum in some intermediary country or return to the country where they were in danger in the first place. The number of persons seeking asylum has reportedly dropped drastically in recent months, but there is some evidence that at least part of this drop is due to an increase in the number of persons turned away by border agents before they can even request a hearing for their credible fear. It is important to realize that we are mostly talking about persons who have traveled thousands of miles on foot, having given up everything, often with children and just the clothing on their backs and what they can carry. And currently at the southern border, these migrants are coming from Europe, Asia, and Africa, as well as Central and South America. In many cases, and especially at the other borders, males or fathers, or at different times even families and children, are detained in what are effectively, or at times in fact, prisons, even though they have committed no crime other than crossing the border, which until recently was a misdemeanor like jaywalking. And they are held or separated for long periods, pending a court hearing, deportation, or ostensibly to assure that they appear in court, even though more than 90% of immigrants with a court date do in fact appear voluntarily if they get proper notice, unlike the rate of general required court appearances of the general U.S. population. I'll speak more about detention a bit later. At any rate, if they pass their initial credible fear interview and are able to request asylum, they will be given a date, currently years in the future, to appear before an immigration judge. And if they get their inevitable notices of postponement, if they lack competent legal representation, the overwhelming majority will not be granted asylum. And at least the fathers or single persons will be ordered, detained, and eventually deported. A recent development, an outgrowth of the efforts of what is termed expedited removal, is that court dates are suddenly rescheduled to a much earlier date, often leaving the migrant and their attorneys, if they have them, inadequate time to make it to court or to adequately prepare their case if they even receive the notice at all. One can hardly imagine what these individuals must have gone through or feared to throw everything away and to go through this process. At any rate, if asylum is granted, those individuals may receive work permits and a path to permanent residence. Another category of immigrant we hear of are those often referred to as illegals. These are persons seeking to enter the U.S., often for the same reasons as refugees or asylum seekers, or to join family already here, but who try to avoid border agents, probably because they have previously been rejected or for other reasons, but essentially because they have no access to alternatives or they fear the system. These are people and families who cross the border at locations that are not official crossing points, often at lethal risk. Or they are persons who had a visa temporarily allowing them to enter the U.S., but have overstayed the time allowed. As of 2020, 62% of the persons in the U.S. without status were persons who had overstayed their visas. In general, they blend into the general population, and despite common misinformation, they work, they pay taxes, they pick our crops, they clean our houses, they wash our restaurant dishes, etc. They receive no benefits and have a much lower rate of committing crime than the general population. They also have children who are born in the U.S. and are therefore U.S. citizens, and who may or may not, depending on the policies at the time, be a way to ensure their parents' ability to remain in the U.S. Although, again, fathers, if found to be in the U.S. without status, can be detained for long periods and are frequently deported, leaving behind single moms who may not speak the language or have any way to support themselves, caring for U.S. citizen children. Presently, these individuals have no path for permanent residence or citizenship unless an immigration judge changes their status. A particular feature of the U.S. immigration system is the detention of persons. At different persons, even children seeking asylum or found to be without proper documentation or status, and sometimes even if they have proper status but are foreign born, are detained. Currently, this primarily affects persons who have overstayed their visas or who have come into the country at other than the southern border. And some of these individuals may have been here being very productive citizens for many years. The U.S. operates the largest detention system in the world. This feature of our system has become a multi-billion-dollar business, not just with ICE, that is, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, but also for prisons and private corporations. This inevitably creates tremendous incentive to continually add more facilities and beds, as well as to fill those beds, so that even when numbers have declined, the ICE enforcement and detention budget has continually increased. And even after those who can do appear before an immigration judge, if they lack legal representation, which they have no right to, the overwhelming majority lose their cases and are detained pending deportation. Deportation means they're being returned to the country where they feared for their lives in the first place. By international law, this is considered refoulement. And by definition, this is a violation of international law. Or, in the case of those who entered as children, they may be sent back to a country that they have never known. But, and this is something most people don't realize, the U.S. must first receive the approval of the receiving country, which can take many, many months, and which then means many, many months of additional detention when this involves a country with whom we do not have a prior agreement. And that is why the U.S. in recent years has entered into arrangements with countries of origin or intermediary countries to accept persons to whom we have denied asylum, or to keep migrants before they even reach the U.S. border. For more information about how U.S. policy affects how many people are seeking entry from the South, see the link at the bottom where you found this link. There are a number of other categories by which persons can enter the United States with legal status, at least temporarily for specific reasons. Among these are temporary protected status, or TPS, which currently includes people from Ukraine and other countries undergoing extraordinary conditions, or persons such as from Iraq or Afghanistan who have worked with the U.S. government and may therefore now be in danger. Additionally, for not an insignificant fee, a person may apply for and be granted permanent or temporary residence in the U.S. based on specific types of reasons, such as being sponsored by family here, as a tourist, for business reasons or when sponsored by an employer, humanitarian reasons, or the diversity lottery within quotas set for specific countries. Those granted permanent residency may eventually apply for citizenship after a certain period of time. Individuals from certain countries currently, such as Venezuela or Haiti, may alternatively apply for advanced travel authorizations on humanitarian grounds, which, if granted, would allow them to stay in the country for 2 years. But they need to show that they have a sponsor, such as a family member in the U.S., and financial support or resources. These individuals may also apply for a work permit and also for extensions of their stay. This has been an overview of the types of migrants and immigrants and categories of immigrants entering the U.S. I have made every effort to be impartial and to verify the information I've presented here, but I acknowledge that I've generalized and simplified, and I'm certainly no expert. The complete picture of immigration in the U.S. is much more complex and nuanced than what I have presented. And the specifics may be changing even as you hear this. But in the spirit of this series, I urge you to vote, and in considering your vote, to seriously consider which candidate's policies are likely to be the most humane and consistent with Catholic social justice teaching. For further understanding of the issues and political approaches, look for our next session on September 24. Thank you.